Okay, so part two of this is how to open up a file, how to get it set up for skinning, and how to start skinning. I'll talk you through a few different maps and what they mean, what they do, and how to properly get started. Again, this is just what I've put together from learning and seeing other people do things. Some people may have better ways of doing this, you may know better ways. Up to you, completely up to you. But this is aimed at someone who has never opened the app before. So from here, this looks a little bit intimidating when you don't know what any of this means. So basic anatomy, I guess, of Substance Painter. So, and this is how it will open for you. You can change everything, you can move everything. So we'll have all of our brush material options over here on the left. We have properties, which will come up later. Texture set list, this is where all of your model information will be. So the model itself for the body, the eyes, the teeth. Log, so if there is something wrong with the program, if it can't import a model for a reason, it will come up in here. This is the only one I have moved for this because it usually comes down here and I can't see what I'm doing. And export. I don't use it here. I use it in the file settings, but you're more than welcome to use it here if that's what works for you. Our layers, which again will come in later, and our texture set settings, which will be for the model that we bring in. So first off, on the top left, we'll go File, New Project, and it'll come up with this screen here. So this is all of your details to do with the model itself. So 3D mesh, no file selected. So we need to go in and select our model. So I'm going to use EO. And I've got that open. Don't need to worry about that. Document resolution, as high as it'll go, the higher detailed the model is, the higher detailed your skin will be. If your computer is a little bit nuggety like mine can be at times, you can change this later and you can change what it is just to see and then bring it up to what you need. DirectX is fine. Some models will be OpenGX. The person who has made the 3D model will usually tell you if so. So don't worry about that right now. All of these ones are fine. UV tile workflow, that just imports how it's already set up. Import cameras, don't need to worry about. Auto unwrap, we're going to keep that off. The UV unwrapping is something that usually the 3D artists will do. And it makes it a lot easier for you as well because the auto unwrapping can sometimes be a little bit janky. And it will also mean that when you export the skin, it's going to be in the same layout. Please keep in mind as well that when going in between models, sometimes if they've re-exported it, the maps can be set up in a different way and they won't transfer. So please be careful. As a little side tangent. Import baked maps. You can do that from here, adding in your normal maps, your world space, your ambient occlusion, your curvature, all of that you can do in here, but you can also add that layer, which is what I'm going to do because that is my usual workflow. We will go create now because we have our model and we don't need to worry about anything else. So we now have a very blinding, bold EO. So this is where our sort of Substance Painter anatomy has come in. You can see there's a bit more going on now. So as before, so we have our assets, which is all of your brushes, your materials, all sorts. We're going to change it from materials to either brushes or show all. I'm going to go brushes because that's just a bit easier for me to see. Properties is all about the brush, so you can change all of the sizes in here. Everything is detailed in here for you. You can close these menus down a little bit, but I like to keep them open. You also have information on the top about your brush. This is size, flow, opacity, and spacing. They'll usually be preset to the brush, and the ones that you'll mostly change are your opacity and your size. We also have along the right here, symmetry. Now I've got mine set up with the red line so I can see if it's on or if it's off. You can turn that off. It is on by default. You can change that through the view settings. We also have over here a bit of information about how we view the model. So we have the different options for how to see it. So 3D and 2D. Oh, I'm on the eyeball. There we go. So this is the UV unwrap. So when you export your skin, when you get a new model, this is what tells the system if it's going to match up or not. So right now, because this is what is set up in game as the unwrap, this will unwrap correctly when I export the skin. So we then also have 3D only and 2D only, which I usually keep it on 3D only. Next to that, we have our different views. So perspective view is like you're holding the model. You can see that it's coming and going closer and further away from you. It looks like an actual physical like toy, I would say. Then orthographic view, which is one that makes everything look fancy, and it does sometimes help. This one basically means that everything is the same size no matter how far away the camera is from it. And I know that's a little bit tricky to sort of understand, but you can see how the sizing is changing depending on where I have it. This is what I'll usually have it on. It does just work with my head a little bit better. It's completely up to you how you want to work, and sometimes you can go in between each one. Underneath that, we have our lighting options. So Material will come up with all of the maps, all of the generators, everything. Where Base Color will only show what you have painted. So it'll get rid of all the textures. It will be flat. It will be like you're looking at a 2D option. Speaking of 2D, with the static or the whatever view, you can also get your accurate side views. Whereas if I were to change it to perspective, you can see we've got the feet and the horns on the other side showing. But if we go back to orthographic, it's all even. So this is where you can do your tracing and your line arts for people as well. Changing it over to base color with this as well can sometimes make it a bit easier to see what you're doing. It does sometimes help with detail work, scale work, generators, all sorts. So I do recommend switching between. I'm going to go back to material for now. Back over to texture set list, we can see what UVs we have. So as we saw before, the UV unwrap. And here is where you can change the resolution. So for most cases, like eyeballs, teeth, horns, claws, all of that extra sort of stuff will be on its own UV map or UV tile, sorry. And you can change that down to the lowest setting because we're not looking at that, and it will just save on some of your computer processing. This is where you can also change the main body resolution as well. Just be careful if you have done a lot of work and are bringing it down, because it can sometimes take a good amount of time. Mine has varied between 2 minutes to sometimes 10 and 20, but I have a nugget. So that is most of that. So then we have our layers down here. You can see we don't really have anything here. But if we go to texture set settings, this is all opened up. So a lot more settings we can change. We don't have to. You don't need to touch 90% of the things on this app. And then we have where we can put all of our maps now. So if you're using generators, gradients that are projected, things like that, it pulls from this information. It won't pull from anywhere else. And if you import these, when you import the 3D model itself, they should appear here. All right, our next part is all of our fun stuff. So the display stuff. This is where you can change the lighting, the background, the texture itself, so whether it's shiny or matte, everything. So we have here environment exposure. You can go through and have a really good play with all of this. So you can see we've got environment opacity. You can change which one you've currently got on. So it'll be a whole different lighting set depending on what you select. I personally like Benefico. And then sometimes I'll use some of the studio ones if I'm trying to get a really good underneath view, like underside of wings or underbelly, that sort of thing, where lighting is a little bit difficult. So you can change all of that in here. There's heaps of settings as you go down. Just have a bit of a play and find what looks good for you. Then underneath that, we have our shader settings. So this is where you can change the material that the model is presenting as. So it's opened for me as OpenPBR. This basically means I can change everything that I want. And there's some really not so useful settings in here. Then most of the time on like the 2024 version, car paint, PBR car paint is the best one. It's a very matte finish, but I find that using OpenPBR in the 2026 version can sometimes allow me to get the model closer to what it would be in game, so a little bit more shiny on the scales but not overpowering. It can sometimes help for me to know where things are and what's going to be seen, because sometimes you can spend hours doing detail that's not going to come up in game. All right, so that's how we basically bring this in. We're going to start with our maps now. So we can get rid of our layer here. We don't need that right now. So when bringing in maps, understanding what they do and how to use them can really make a difference. So your normal map is your basic textures. So the model is the model is modeled in there's a high poly with all of the details, and then you have a low poly, which is a game ready version so that it doesn't fry everyone's PCs for how big the model is and how detailed it is. And then the details from the high poly are projected onto the low poly. So that's how something can look really flat on some angles. Or you can see the tries, but it still looks like there's scales and things happening there. So that's where that comes from. Your world space normal tells the computer where the lighting is coming from. So at the moment, our model is being projected that way. This comes into effect when you're using some gradients, projections, all sorts. Your ambient occlusion is a lot more shading. Curvature is a lot more detail, which we will need. And then all of your other extra ones here. Opacity map can be used really nicely with feathers, which are an absolute pain. But it can show you how the feathers are going to look in game because they're not really the same in 3D, but we'll get to that. So first off, we need our normal map. So I'll bring it up here and I'll show you what this is. So this is a normal map. So you can see how the UV matches the UV layout that we had for our EO, which means everything here will line up. It is the correct one. You can see we've got a fair amount of detail here as you zoom in. It does get a bit pixelated, but everyone will be. This is a particularly crispy one, which is why I like to use it. The crispier, the better. So we're going to grab our normal and drag it into the layer section. It'll come up with a menu when we drop, and we need to hit normal because it is a normal map. So you can see now that has been applied to our model. And it's nice and shiny. So there are cases where it will be inverted and the scales look like innies and you will have seams. I'll show you what that means. So to fix it is the same path as me showing you how to do it. So on your normal map in here, right click, and then add levels. In here, if we go up to properties, it'll have a new menu that's come up and some new information here. We want to change affected channel from base color to normal because it's a normal map, and it's come up with your RGB colors here. We want to change colors to green because green is what is inverted. We then hit invert here. Oh, we were in his. I think it was just the lighting then. There we go. So it is nice and out now. Yeah, the lighting I had can make it a little bit tricky. So if we go to here, and then if we go to, let's try that one. There we go. You can see that now. You can see how inward those are, and it doesn't look right. And then we just invert, and that's all back to normal for us. Our next map that we're going to add is the curvature map, or if you've just ripped it out of the, well, not ripped, but exported it out of the dev kit with an official character, it is called the RAA, or the RA map. So you can see here, this is sort of like the normal, and again, the UV layout is the same, it's the right one, but it's a hell of a lot more crispy. It is a lot clearer where all of the scales are and where all of those little details are throughout. So this is a combination of a few different maps. The one that we want from this is the curvature. The curvature map will usually come up as a black and white sort of looking map. I don't have one for EO because I'm lazy, and the RA map I have found works just fine. So what we're going to do, I'll close that, and we'll add the RA map in, but we're going to add it as a height map. And you can see we've got some unuseful settings here at the moment. Let me see. What are we doing? Oh, that's why, because I touched an unuseful setting. There we go. Okay. This one is, it does weird. It's useful for something, but I haven't figured out what just yet. So you can see now we have all of that detail projected. And you can see, as I was saying before, how flat it is. So that's the low poly map showing versus the high poly that's projected on top. So we've got just the normal and with the RA. This is a lot more useful when you're doing direct scale work, coloring scale by scale, and doing some really high detail work, or doing a inverted map so that the sort of skin in between the scales is showing, but we'll get into that again later. From here, we're going to add our layers to paint onto. So as explained in the previous video, there are 4 base colors that are static and 3 patterns. So we're going to set that up for us. So first we'll hit add group. You can add these into the group if you like as well to keep your textures together. And then we'll hit the fill layer. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, there. All right, and then we'll go add another group, and 1, 2, 3. So that will be our pattern layers. We're going to close that, turn that off for the moment. Here, with our base colors, the very bottom one doesn't get a paint layer, and you don't paint on that one. The next one up, we're going to select and right click and add a black mask. We'll do the same for the rest. So select, right click, black mask. All right, that's set up as far as we know. And then we'll go to our patterns, black mask, black mask and black mask. Okay. You can also see that I've got it set up with little balls as the preview color. This can make it difficult when you're sending a skin through or you're wanting to use the select tool to get your colors. You can change this if you go to edit settings, and then in general, there will be this section here, layer stack options. We're going to turn use simplified thumbnails on. And this is a bug that I've found quite a bit, especially with models where it doesn't change. So what you can then do is go in again and try again, and we'll see if this works. No, okay, so we're going to live with that. It's fine, it just sometimes makes it a little bit more difficult to get the exact colors, but it's all workaroundable. So to select your colors, when you're going through, you need to select the object itself, so the full circle, and then go to properties, and here you'll have base color. You can see we've got a dropper here, so I can just go in and it'll select that color. It is unforgiving, so it will look, especially with like greens, if you're selecting from like a lizard, an actual photo of a lizard, it will come out like neon, so just be prepared to adjust. But we'll go in and we'll just choose a color set for now. We'll do like a muted sand, and then each of our colors. And then the top 3 colors will all be the same, so I'm just going to choose a color. You can select. It will auto select when you hit left click. Control C. We'll close, and then we'll go to the next one and Control V, and that'll bring the same color over, regardless of the shiny bollocks. All right. I've chosen random colors, so this is probably not going to look too great, but the point is there. So when we're ready to paint, we need to select our black mask, and I find it best to right click and add paint. This means that you can paint on multiple layers on the same color. Substance Painter doesn't allow you to do multiple colors on the same layer like most 2D platforms will, so you need to be really careful with your color placement and your layering as well. So we've got our red here. I have symmetry on with the red line. I have a brush selected. I'm going to change that over, and I can start painting. Then if I add another paint layer and say I want to do the same spot, I can then blur. This is very quick because I will go through more detail later and see it's unaffected. I'll change that color so it's a little bit easier to see. There we go, that's better. And then, so I've got my top layer, my bottom. It only really matters where you have things positioned in the paint layers, like one on top of the other when you're blending. Sometimes a blended layer over the top of a detailed layer will sometimes merge a little bit. Just bring that blended layer down. So you can see now I have the blended layer on the bottom, and I can go in and I can erase that without affecting the layer on the top. So from here, have a bit of a play around with your settings. You can change the shininess, the details, all sorts. I will take this opportunity actually to show the car paint, so you can see how muted that is. And if I go from material to base color, so you can really get into the nitty-gritty of details through there. All right, go and have some fun, and I will make the next video shortly.